China has officially revolutionized the game, making the yuan fully tradable against physical gold on the Shanghai exchanges, with delivery points from Hong Kong to the heart of the Middle East. And now, whispers from Riyadh reveal a bold new chapter: a sovereign gold vault rising in Saudi Arabia, engineered by the Shanghai Gold Exchange, poised to settle oil trades in yuan and gold, bypassing the dollar's long reign. Joining me today to unpack all this is Alastair Crooke, a seasoned British diplomat and the founder of Conflicts Forum. Alastair, welcome to the show.
A great pleasure to be on your show. Thank you.
Alastair, you've called this China's super monetary highway. How does Saudi's emerging vault turbocharge it, and what does it spell for the West's fading grip on global finance?
Well, of course, this is a hugely important element, and there are more to it than just that. So first of all, yes, the Shanghai Metals Exchange is indeed opening vaults in Hong Kong and in Saudi Arabia, and they have plans elsewhere. Now, why is it so important, Hong Kong? Because that's offshore. It's not within the capital controls that you have if you like, on the mainland China. But what they're also doing, and this I think is going to become increasingly important, is that they are issuing gold warrants also from the Shanghai Metals Exchange. And you can, if you like, these warrants will be receipts for owning gold held in their vault. Now, you can take delivery of gold anywhere in that circuit. You can take it in Hong Kong, or you can take it in Saudi Arabia, and you can give delivery in those areas. But why are the warrants so important? Because they effectively make an opportunity for repro operations to take place using the warrants. And indeed, this is happening already. There's an Australian firm and there's another firm that is using these warrants in this way. And in fact, I mean, what we're seeing is that the warrants, if you come to repro or indeed borrowing money and you want collateral, the warrants are an alternative to U.S. treasuries. Perhaps a better alternative than U.S. treasuries, which are devaluing virtually every month as we speak. So these can be lodged as collateral for either taking out loans. So we see that, and the Chinese are building very much their debt market up. Their debt market is growing very fast, and the panda debt market is growing also. And so Russia is going to be financing much of its future energy projects on panda bonds from China, denominated in the renminbi, in the if you like, the digital renminbi. It's a revolution that is quietly being unfolded, and there's more to it yet, because equally, for 4 years they were running a trial, which was called the Mbridge trial. You're probably aware of it, where there was direct, if you like, a central bank digital clearing of currencies, only between central banks. And that was run by the BIS, and it went on for 4 years, and Saudi was a member, and there were some 5 Middle East states and a number of Asian states. Well, just before the Kazan SCO conference, a little earlier, the BIS walked out of that.
Exactly.
They said, can't have anything to do with bypassing sanctions that would not be really very good. I mean, that's after 4 years. What did they think the whole exercise was about if it wasn't about finding an alternative to the dollar? Anyway, the Chinese have taken it up. It was Chinese technology anyway. The Chinese have taken it, if you like, reinvented the bridge. They now call it the Renminbi Settlement System. And they have launched it, and there are already 11 Asian states on it and 5 Middle Eastern states using it. And so it is operational and now. And what they are planning, and this is what Lavrov said a couple of weeks ago, around about the time, just before, I think, the SCO meeting, but he said, we're going to open this technology to all the Belt and Road countries, and to BRICS, and to the East Asian, so everyone can use this technology. The thing about it that you have to remember is it is incompatible with the dollar, the pound, or the euro. So it's right out of that system, this clearing system. The whole thing is a new infrastructure of trade payments through, if you like, Bridge. They're introducing also a form of clearinghouse, which will be like the Euroclear, which we have in Europe, based in Brussels, where, if you like, certificates and things like the tokens can be held, the warrants, the gold warrants can be held. But you can see this is going to be already starting with states using, if you like, these warrants. And so the renminbi is quickly, if you like, becoming an international, if you like, currency. It's becoming an international currency. And in becoming an international currency, it's not totally convertible to gold. It's not a gold standard. I want to make that clear. What it is linked to gold through the Shanghai Metal Exchange. And you can directly, if you like, as you said, exchange into gold there. But that's not its purpose, just to be a metal exchange. Its purpose is to allow things like these warrants, gold warrants, to be able to be traded. And it's quite interesting. When it started, since it started, the amount of warrants, if you like, used has gone up enormously on the Shanghai Metals Exchange.
Yes.
But the amount of actually bullion that has been removed, taken delivery, physical, is no change. It's pretty much the same. So obviously people are using it and thinking of it of a substitute for eventually for treasuries, and using that as collateral, and to use that instead of treasuries for finding finance, like the Russians are doing it, like an Australian company, and like Hungary, which has already taken out a 2 billion panda bomb. So the debt market of China, is going up. It's not as big as the United States, which I think is about 50 trillion, but China is second at about 20 trillion. So it's going up quite sharply. So China is really moving very fast, and you can see the appeal of this to Saudi Arabia. And people say, well, Saudi Arabia, it'll always stay with the West. It's never going to move. But remember, Saudi Arabia was a member of that first Mbridge experiment too.
Yes.
As other ones. So it's not, it's a continuation, if you like. Only now they're going to use it on China's own, if you like, technology that is being made freely available to any state that wants to use it.
Whoa, let's stop here for just a moment, because this is critical. When the next financial crisis hits, accounts will be locked just like 2008, and it will be too late to do anything about it. I've reported on global markets for over 20 years, and what's happening right now is unlike anything we've faced before. The window to act is closing fast, and the opportunity is now. That's why we've created the Private Wealth Playbook. It's free, and it shows you how to move into the proper gold and silver strategies, proven to protect and grow wealth when everything else breaks down. Don't wait until after the crisis hits. Click below or go to DannyReport.com and download the Private Wealth Playbook right now. Now back to the show. A few questions, because you have just said so many incredible points here. One, I just want to say I'm happy that you brought up Mbridge, because when the BIS stepped out, the headlines were, oh, that's it, Mbridge is dead. So I'm happy that you clarified that it is not, that it's still chugged along. Correct, Alastair?
That's right.
Okay. What is the motivation for China? Is it because they are looking, they're seeing the dollar was weaponized, they saw what happened to Russia? I mean, what is the driving force behind this?
BRICS. Basically, it's about providing a structure of payments across, the whole, what it'll encompass. If it's taken up by all those states, it'll encompass nearly 90% of the global population. And you have to understand, in a sense, this is deeply buried in Chinese geopolitical thinking. What happened also, you will have been aware at that Shanghai meeting, again, not got a great deal of coverage, which was the contracts were signed for Siberia too. Now, why is that so important? Well, because China historically has always concentrated the Middle Kingdom as a sort of surrounded by walls to keep out the far-flung barbarians on their borders for 2,000 years. And how they've done that, apart from building the Great Wall and other things, they've done that through links, roads, forms of linkage to states. And even 1,000 years or so ago, they were instituting a certain axle size that everyone must follow in the Middle Kingdom so that all the roads were compatible and people could move freely from one part of the widely spread kingdom to the center. So what this is doing is it's now extending this, if you like, to Russia. It's becoming dependent on Russia. That was a huge decision for China to become dependent on Russia for energy. And Russia, pari passu, has become dependent on China too. And of course, this is intended to be extended, and I'm sure India, there'll be a branch of this line to India, and that will be another aspect of it. But just in mentioning, of course, Siberia too, because people sometimes don't pick this up, but Siberia too comes, if you like, from the Arctic oil and gas fields, the gas fields in the far Arctic area. And they were always developed to provide gas to Europe. And that was Nord Stream. That was the idea of them. They were going to provide cheap energy for Europe to maintain its economic model. And then now what's happened is that those Arctic fields, which are on the other side of Russia from China, all of that is now going to China. It'll be a few years till it's complete. It's 2030 is the date. But the Chinese are very quick in these things. Maybe earlier, I don't know. But anyway, the point is, there's going to be no more cheap gas for Europe because it's all going to go to China. And so Europe, that's gone now. That's all gone, and it's going to the east.
What does this ultimately mean for the U.S., Alastair?
What it means, well, first of all, is it will, I think, affect, and I'm not an expert in this field particularly, but it will affect the whole idea of LNG, because American LNG was, part of the idea was that LNG from America would serve China. Well, I think now that whole calculus, apart from the state of those fields, which tend to be declining, is going to make the LNG much more difficult. The investment in LNG is going to be rather difficult because China is now going to get a source of very cheap piped gas, the cheapest form of energy available. I know that really is the nail in the coffin of when Trump said, we're going to have energy dominance. We're going to have complete energy dominance. It's not going to be quite like that now.
But
and of course, the economic changes that are coming are also going to, just as the, if you like, petrodollar, fixed a great deal of the energy infrastructure and things around petrodollar trading and petrodollar, if you like, payment systems. Once we move to a different form through the bridge, they still call it the bridge, even it's not Mbridge anymore, the bridge, then we are going to see, I think, a big shift, not only just geopolitical one, but also because when you look and people are looking, we can go into what happened in Doha and how that is accelerating this shift geopolitically. But also, the fact is, where is the place to do business today? Well, if you ask an American, he'll say to you, innovation, technology, America's, the best in the world. Well, actually, if you go and have a look at what's happening in Siberia, it is humming with new businesses. I don't mean mining, I don't mean energy necessarily, but all sorts of manufacturing, technical firms. It's really humming, and they're planning for 25 years in Siberia, the Russians. Huge projects, cooperating with China.
Alastair, let me ask you this. Is the U.S. not aware of what's happening? They must be aware of this action plan. What cards do they have to play?
Well, I think I think there's a question of being aware, but actually being, traditionally radically skeptical. Nothing will come of this. I mean, I remember when I said there was going to be the Siberia 2, one of the energy experts, never happen, won't happen. We've been talking about this for a long time. It'll never happen. And so there is this sort of, they have been saying the same things, and, the dollar will never be displaced. It can't be displaced.
Yes.
And,
yes.
It's not going to be displaced by another reserve currency, because that's not what China's doing. It's actually internationalizing the renminbi, the yuan, in a new way, in a digital way. And that will what's following from that is, of course, then there's the BRICS card, so people can use. I mean, look what's happening already. The Mir card, the Iranian Mir card, suddenly is available again in Turkey. And the tourists from Russia heading back to Turkey because the Mir card is functioning there as if they were in Russia. And the Mir card works in China as well.
Alastair, having covered the BRICS for so long, the pushback I usually hear is you'll never get them to agree. And you'll especially never get the other countries part of the BRICS to trust China and Russia. Why would they trust specifically China?
I've heard that, and in fact, I partly subscribed to that. I gave a talk in St. Petersburg about a bit over a year ago. It was a conference on the BRICS. And I said, I think the greatest problem for the BRICS is that a number of the states want to keep a foot in both camps. They want to be in the BRICS camp, but they also want to have a foot in the West and in the dollar sphere. And that particularly applied to India. And I think what has happened in this period, I mean, rather paradoxically, is Trump's tariffs, and particularly his, I have to say, unfeeling and rather insensitive treatment of India. I mean, I don't talking just about the transactional part of it, but the way in which it was couched, the way in which, I think it was Navarro who talked about the Brahmins laughing at the poor Chinese who would pay the bill for all of this. So I think this has been a very salutary lesson for all of those countries. And then we've had the attack on Doha, which has put into question this whole issue of, these Gulf states thought America had their back, that, they were protected by America. And as long as they joined with America against Iran, particularly Saudi, I remember 10 years ago, Saudi, felt, because there's always been rivalry between the Shia and the Sunni like that. So they thought, with that, we're fine. We'll buy American weapons, no problem. Now things have changed. And look what Saudi did in this last period, in these last days. They agreed they formed a security agreement with Pakistan, which extends to nuclear weapons and is a defensive agreement, i.e., if one is attacked, it is mandatory on the other to intervene on both sides. So it's like an Article 5 NATO agreement, but between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. What did you see in Egypt? You saw that Egypt are deploying across the Sinai Chinese air defenses, not American, Chinese air defenses. And you see that the same sort of pattern coming. It's not going to happen tomorrow. The statement from the Doha meeting contained nothing really substantive, but it's the beginning of what I think is going to be a tectonic change that is taking place. And, they felt very betrayed because, after all, America asked Doha to have Hamas. And just as Trump had asked Doha to host the Taliban, you will recall, in the run-up to the American withdrawal from Kabul. So, there are sort of cultural things, in the idea and in the world of a guest being protected and being there as guest. But I do know that the Americans deliberately put them, Hamas, and in fact it was President Assad told me that clearly. He said that, Colin Powell had asked him to cut the links with Iran and with Hamas. And Assad said, well, Iran is one thing, but what do you want me to do with Hamas? Do you want me to send them back to Gaza to be killed by Israel? No, he said, it's taken care of. Hamas are going to Doha, to Qatar.
The UN Security Council has voted to permanently lift economic sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program, Alastair, delivering a major economic blow that Tehran claims is politically biased. A resolution this Friday, as we speak, to block the sanctions fell in the Security Council by a vote of 4-9, meaning European sanctions will return by September 28th if no major deal is reached beforehand. You say this is monumental.
Oh, certainly, because Iran have said very clearly, in these circumstances, they will probably abandon the NPT. Parliament has already passed a resolution for Iran to leave the NPT. This is the lead-up to, if you like, the last play of Netanyahu and Israel in the region. After rampage through the region, attacking 6 countries in the last few weeks. From Tunisia to Syria to Lebanon to Yemen, etc., ignoring boundaries, frontiers, law, international, the UN Charter. All of this has been swept aside, and they have proceeded on. But of course, the finishing part that they're looking for is to attack Iran and to collapse Iran, to turn it into a sort of Syria, to break it and set its people inside. If you like, the Baluchis or the Azeris or whatever it is, to set them fighting at each other and to turn Iran into a weak state that they can have someone like Shira come in and pose as a new, if you like, Western sympathetic, even though he was ISIS not so very long ago. So yes, we're moving towards war, and it'll be a big war, and its ramifications are great. Now, you don't hear much, and I'll tell you why, because we follow the resistance, channels as much as we follow the mainstream things. Everything has gone dark. Everyone is preparing. Everyone is preparing for the big war. And so no telephones, no communications, no speeches, no one saying what we're going to do, no one saying what's going to happen next. So I don't know what is going to happen next, but I think it's going to be a very dangerous time that is coming up, because for Netanyahu, he's been preaching 25 years about the need to break Iran and to install a sympathetic government.
I mean, Alastair, that's absolutely terrifying. And unfortunately, you just made me think of conversations I've had with my sources in Italy and France, particularly in hospitals, in the medical field, where they are preparing, hospitals are preparing for war. Are you hearing that
Yes.
as well?
Yeah. Yes. In Britain, they've just erected a sort of £1 million tented hospital in Hyde Park. In France, Macron is also. Now, I'm not sure whether they really expect a war this quickly, or are they doing this in order to build up fear? Because it's usually tied to Russia. And partly, I suspect that this is about, the desperation of the European elites facing economic crisis at home and a very unhappy electorate, that they are using Russia, war, as a means of, if you like, keeping things together. The European Union, survives by being sort of coming around the flag, gathering around the flag of the war on Russia and the support for Ukraine. And that would probably collapse if
Europe,
in these circumstances.
do you truly believe Europe is at the threshold of collapse?
Yes, yes. Oh, yes. I mean, economic, and probably worse than that. The internal, I mean, just look at the pictures coming out of France in these last 2 days with 80,000, these are not police, these are sort of SWAT squads, 80,000 attacking the demonstrations and things. It's going to be pretty unpleasant, I think, in Europe.
I have so many questions for you. I know I have limited time with you today, but getting back to what China's doing with gold, does the infrastructure remind you of the 1970s petrodollar creation? Is it at the same level, would you say?
Yes, it's more diffuse. It's not so lowerly defined as in the 1970s, where it was just about this, because the whole aim of China is to allow everyone to use their own currencies, and that we are providing the technology and the means by which you can clear, whatever your rupee with Iran, with China. We can do all this through our technology. So it isn't this sort of narrow demand only to use the dollar. In fact, there's no demand from China that you have to use a digital yuan, or you can use your own currency and you clear it. The only thing is you can't clear it if you're dealing in pounds, sterling, or euros.
Before I ask you my final question, help me answer this mystery. I feel like you're the only person on the planet that actually knows the truth. When we saw the amount of so-called gold moving from London to New York, was it true? I mean, I saw the numbers. I believe that to be true. And two, what was the reason behind it?
I think that's true. And I think it's all about, we're looking there at the Trump's plans if you like, to try and deal with the debt, American debt. And so I think that they're bringing in the gold because they do intend to further devalue the dollar. It's about, I think it's about 15 or 16% devalued already in this period. But the people who were involved with the Mar-a-Lago Accord were talking about a 30% devaluation of the dollar, not 15%, so a substantial one. So I suspect people were in the low were bringing in gold because they know that price is set for. And we have complex ideas from some of these people, from Besant and others, that they can use cryptocurrencies or something like this to keep the, if you like, at least the short end of the bond market up, because they're desperate to get interest rates down.
When we saw central banks now hold more gold than U.S. treasuries, does it mean, how do you interpret that? Are they dumping treasuries, or can both coexist? They're still holding treasuries, but they just happen to hold more gold now.
Oh, I think the point I've made is the way in which China has sort of trickled out these statements. I mean, there's been no big announcement, no great razzmatazz about it at all. It's deliberately not wanting to upset the financial system, and not only to upset Trump.
Understood.
Particularly.
Understood.
So I think they're doing this very gradually. So no, they're not going to have a big sell-off of U.S. treasuries and provoke a crisis that way. But they will continue gradually and persistently to reduce their holdings of U.S. treasuries, and so will most other states, many other states, be reducing. As you will see from the graphs, they've already been going down quite substantially.
Alastair, just last question here as we wrap. Obviously, we're in a very divisive time, is an understatement to talk about America right now, but the U.S. also, the United Kingdom, also in the midst of a heated national debate over free speech, fueled by a surge in arrests for online posts that are deemed offensive. Apparently, police are making over 30 arrests per day. That's more than 12,000 in 2023 alone, a 121% increase from 2017, and a 58% rise since pre-pandemic levels. Just a word on what your interpretation of what's happening in the UK is right now.
This is totalitarian. There was a huge demonstration in London just a few days ago, I think at the weekend. I mean, the numbers there, the police say it wasn't anything like being claimed for it. But I looked at the photographs. It was a very big, several 100,000 probably there. Ordinary people, ordinary, not radical people, waving the flag. And the police were arresting them for this. In parts of England, you get arrested if you put the Union flag or the St. George's Cross on a lamppost or outside because they say this is racist, this is far right, we won't allow you to do this. This must be shocking to Americans who are waving the American flag is absolutely standard practice. But in England, it's not under this government. And I think you will find that it will be not long before we will see violence in the streets. Some small incident will provoke it. It will be an attack on a young girl or something like this. And then it will go boom, because it's ready to explode.
Alastair Crooke, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Very important conversation. Thank you. And thank you all for watching. Please stay tuned to the Daniela Camboni Show.